There are Swedish and Norwegian kids, Danes, Italians and French kids, Greeks, even Americans. George and Hagbard move through the crowd trying to estimate its number. 200,000, 300,000, 500,000. Peace symbols dangling about every neck. Nudes with body paint. Nudes without body paint. Long and dangling hair on boys and girls alike. And over all of it, the hypnotic and unending beat.
Woodstock Europa,
Hagbard says dryly.
The last and final Walpurgisnacht, an Adam Weishaupt's erosion, finally realized.
We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight.
It's the League of Nations,
George says.
A young people's League of Nations.
Hagbard isn't listening.
Up there,
He points.
to the northwest, is the Rhine, where Lorelei was supposed to sit and sing her deadly songs. There'll be deadlier music on the Danube tonight.
We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. But that was still 7 days in the future. And now, George lies unconscious in Mad Dog County Jail. And it began, that phase of the operation, as Hagbard called it, over 30 years before, when a Swiss chemist named Hoffman climbed on his bicycle and pedaled down a country road into new dimensions.
And will they all come back?
George asked.
All of them,
Hagbard answered tightly.
when the beat reaches the proper intensity. Unless we can stop it. The universe is the inside without any outside, the sound made by one eye opening. In fact, I don't even know that there is a universe. More likely, there are many multiverses, each with its own dimensions, times, spaces, laws, and eccentricities. We wander between and among these multiverses, trying to convince others and ourselves that we all walk together in a single public universe that we can share. For to deny that axiom leads to what is called schizophrenia. Yeah, that's it. Every man's skin is his own private multiverse. Just like every man's home is supposed to be his castle. But all the multiverses are trying to merge, to create a true universe, such as we have only imagined previously. Maybe it will be spiritual, like Zen or telepathy, or maybe it will be physical, one great big gang fuck. But it has to happen. The creation of a universe, and the one great eye opening to see itself at last. Om Shiva. Oh, man, you're stoned out of your gourd. You're writing gibberish. No, I'm writing with absolute clarity for the first time in my life. Yeah, what was that business about the universe being the sound of one eye opening? Oh, never mind that. Who the hell are you, and how did you get into my head? Your turn now, George.
Sheriff Cartwright stood in the door, a monk in a strange red and white robe beside him, holding some kind of wand, the deep colour of a fire engine.
No.
George started to stammer, but he knew.
Of course you know,
The sheriff said kindly, as if he were suddenly sorry about it all.
You knew before you left New York and came down here.
They were at the foot of the gallows.
Each with its own times, spaces, laws, and eccentricities.
George was thinking wildly. Yes, if the universe is one big eye looking at itself, then telepathy is no miracle. For anyone who opens his own eyes fully can then look through all other eyes. For a moment, George looks through the eyes of John Ehrlichman as Dick Nixon urges lewdly,
You can say I don't remember. You can say I can't recall. I can't give any answer to that I can recall.
I can't give any answer to that I can recall.
All flesh will see it in one instant. Who wrote that? Gonna miss you, boy,
The sheriff said, offering an embarrassed handshake. Numbly, George clasped the man's hot reptilian palm. The monk walked beside him up the gallows steps. 13, George was thinking. There are always 13 steps on a gallows, and you always cream in your jeans when your neck breaks. It has something to do with the pressure on the spinal cord being transmitted through the prostate gland. The orgasm death gimmick, Burroughs calls it. At the 5th step, the monk cried suddenly,
"Hail, Eris!"
George stared at the man, dumbfounded. Who was Eris? Somebody in Greek mythology, but somebody very important.
It all depends on whether the fool has wisdom enough to repeat it. Quiet, idiot! He can hear us.
I got some bad pot, George decided, and I'm still back on the hotel bed hallucinating all this, but he repeated uncertainly,
Hail, Eris!
Immediately, just like his one and only acid trip, dimension began to alter. The steps grew larger, steeper. Ascending them seemed as perilous as climbing Mount Everest. The air was suddenly lit with reddish flame. Definitely, George thought, some weird and freaky pot. And then for some reason he looked upward. Each step was now higher than an ordinary building. He was near the bottom of a pyramidal skyscraper of 13 colossal levels. And at the top, and at the top, and at the top, one enormous eye, a ruby and demonic orb of cold fire without mercy or pity or contempt, and it looked at him and into him and through him. George Dorn awoke screaming. He lay on the floor of his cell in Mad Dog County Jail. Terror tactics, he thought. They were out to break him, a task which was beginning to look easy, but they were covering up the evidence as they went along. There was no light through the cell window. It was therefore still night. He hadn't slept, but merely fainted. George started with an old gimmick. A piece torn off the tail of his shirt gave him a writing tablet. The point of his shoelace became a temporary pen. His own saliva, spat onto the polish of the shoes themselves, created a substitute ink. Laboriously, after a half hour, he had his message written.
Whoever finds this $50 bill to call Joe Malik, New York City, and tell him George Dorn, held without lawyer, Mad Dog County Jail.
The message shouldn't land too close to the jail, so George began looking for a weighted object. In 5 minutes he decided on a spring from the bunk mattress. It took him 17 minutes more to pry it loose. After the missile was hurled out the window, probably George knew to be found by somebody who would immediately turn it over to Sheriff Jim Cartwright, he began thinking of alternate plans. He found, however, that instead of devising schemes for escape or deliverance, his mind insisted on going off in an entirely different direction. The face of the monk from his dream pursued him. He had seen that face somewhere before, he knew, but where? Somehow the question was important. He began trying in earnest to recreate the face and identify it. James Joyce, H.P. Lovecraft, and a monk in a painting by Fra Angelico all came to mind. It was none of them, but it looked somehow a little like each of them. Suddenly, tired and discouraged, George slouched back on the bunk and let his hand lightly clutch his penis through his trousers. Heroes of fiction don't jack off when the going gets rough, he reminded himself. Well, hell, he wasn't a hero, and this wasn't fiction. Then the machine gun fire started. The machine gun suddenly stopped stuttering, and I thought I heard a voice cry, "Ear Wicker," Bloom and Craft. I've still got Joyce on my mind, I decided. Then the third explosion came, and I covered my head as parts of the ceiling began falling on me. A key suddenly clanked against his cell door. Looking up, I saw a young woman in a trench coat, carrying a Tommy gun, and desperately trying one key after another in the lock. From somewhere else in the building, there came a fourth explosion. The woman grinned tensely at the sound.
"Commie motherfuckers,"
she muttered, still trying keys.
"Who the hell are you?"
I finally asked hoarsely.
"Never mind that now,"
she snapped.
"We've come to rescue you, isn't that enough?"
Before I could think of a reply, the door swung open.
"Quick,"
she said.
"This way."